Once the Confederate Army of the Tennessee emerged out of the ravine back there with General Hardee, it continued to surge here towards the west. Immediately to my rear in the distance is the Morris Farm as we transition from the coal farm, the coal plantation part of the battlefield, to the next major fight here on March 19th on the north side of the Goldsboro Road here at the Morris Farm. And it's at this point right here where the Army of Tennessee essentially makes it here, but across to my right and across the old Goldsboro Road in what we call south of the Goldsboro Road, other elements of the Army of Tennessee have surged across the road and into the southern part. And what's important to understand terrain-wise as you look at Bentonville, everything north of the road, the old Goldsboro Road, like the coal plantation, the Morris Farm, it's better for infantry to maneuver. You've got line of sight. You're able to maneuver your formations. Once you take the fight to the south of the old Goldsboro Road, the terrain south there is very restrictive, almost no-go, very swampy ground. So it's very difficult to maneuver. But what's more important right now in this part of the last grand charge of the Army of Tennessee, you've gone well over a mile. And as we surge across that part of the highway over there, command and control breaks down in that abyss. It's difficult to see your commanders. Units become intermingled, okay? And it's during that time that a very aggressive counterattack by the 14th Corps, Fearing's Brigade, will slam into the Army of Tennessee here and almost just checks them for a little while. And it causes them to pause here along Battlefield Road before they once again continue the attack south of the Goldsboro Road. The problem for the Army of Tennessee is they've been very successful up to this point. But unfortunately, there's no reserve. And what you need in an offensive attack, once your leading element starts to culminate or run out of steam or develop problems with command and control like's happening down south of the Goldsboro Road, now's a perfect opportunity for a reserve force. But unfortunately, there's no more reserves. And that's going to be the challenge over here. To my rear, the Morris Farm fight will start to take effect. Because what Fearing's Brigade does here, along with Robinson's Brigade that was there by the coal plantation that falls back there in the distance along the highway there, those two brigades effectively slow up the Army of Tennessee enough to allow more brigades to come into the fight. Because understand, the left wing of the Army is not here at all at one time. It's spread out on the road all the way back towards modern day Newton Grove. So about every 30 minutes, another brigade is going to show up. So when you launch Fearing's counterattack, the aggressive stand by Robinson's brigade back there, that's buying time, okay? And ultimately the fight will now transition to two key parts of the battlefield. South of the Goldsboro Road, which is James Morgan from the 14th Corps, his division, which is very important. And then we have the Morris Farm fight. So the Army of Tennessee is kind of caught up in two different fights here. And over there, south of the Goldsboro Road, it's when the additional Union brigades arrive. General Cogswell's brigade, off in the distance, is sent to link up with Morgan's division as we're now trying to extend the line here. And it's that point in time that a large number, almost 200-300 Army of Tennessee are trapped on the opposite side. It's a classic story where the hunter becomes the hunted. Because what had happened over there south of Goldsboro Road, the Army of Tennessee units that reached that point were now attacking the rear of General Morgan's division. Now with Cogswell Brigade coming up from behind him, now like I said, the hunter becomes the hunted, and Cogswell effectively links up with Morgan's division, but like I say, several hundred Army of Tennessee soldiers are trapped on that opposite side, and that's going to be almost 10 days before they ever make this great daring escape through rear lines and ultimately link back up with their buddies over towards Raleigh. But at that point there, the Army of Tennessee kind of comes back to this location here on Battlefield Road, and it's late in the afternoon from this perspective right here towards the Morris Farm that General Bates, along with William Tolliver's two brigades, Elliott's and Rhett's, will start to make those attacks once again here towards the Morris Farm. But by this stage in the game, you're looking at 20 pieces of artillery, a half a dozen Union brigades over here, no reserve to be able to commit to that. So the Army of Tennessee right here kind of culminates right here as what we call the high water mark here. On the afternoon of March 19th, one of the main significant fights here on the battlefield occurs in the Morris Farm location where I'm standing at right here. Late in the afternoon of March 19th, the 20th Corps, which was coming forward from modern-day Newton Grove, is ordered to drop what they're doing and come forward quick. Like we said earlier, I mentioned in one of the videos, the galvanized Yankees that came forward, and it became pretty obvious. These prisoners, when the information that they shared was true, it's not dismounted cavalry. We've now got a straight-up infantry on infantry fight. And oh, by the way, it's Johnson's entire army. Robinson's brigade, which I've touched on before, up towards the coal plantation, he was the first brigade to arrive from the 20th Corps, and then came Hawley's brigade, which is in the general location that we're at right now here on the Morris Farm. Now, when the left-wing commander realized exactly what he was up against, it was more of a let's consolidate the 20th Corps back along this location here. And shortly after that decision was made, the Army of Tennessee launched that attack. They shoved Robinson's brigade back towards the Morris Farm, where they're positioned out on the main highway, the modern-day highway today, which at the time was the old Goldsboro Road. But to the left of Robinson's brigade, Hawley's brigade would arrive here. And they're positioned here. Initially, you see the line of entrenches that they started to dig here on 19th. They're more orientated more towards the north, okay? Immediately to my rear, you can see how the ground drops off suddenly. Here we go, another one of these ravines here on the battlefield. And Hawley very wisely, using the terrain here on the high point here, using the ravine to his right flank to protect it, he will put his regiments in what I like to call a 3 up, 2 back. He's always going to maintain that reserve, and one of the reserves is the 13th New Jersey. Now, I failed to mention earlier that when Robinson's brigade got deployed up there by the coal plantation, all of a sudden he was ordered to send 2 of his regiments back, the New York Regiment and then the 82nd Illinois. So when Hawley first deploys right here, he's got 3 regiments up to my front back here in the rear of the brigade will be the 13th New Jersey and the 82nd Illinois. Now, as the Army of Tennessee attack becomes very successful and they're sweeping everything back towards this direction, the remnants of General Carlin's division north of the road, specifically Buell's brigade, those soldiers will start to trickle in and running back towards this location right here, and the officers will try to rally them and gather them here. But it's at that point right there they realize we need to extend the line a little more. And Hawley orders the 13th New Jersey and the 82nd Illinois, which will continue this line of entrenchments, but this time across the ravine. And so they will continue it. So the 2 reserve regiments back here will deploy across the ravine, extending this line either further out here to the open field. Once the 13th New Jersey and 82nd Illinois deployed across the ravine, their new battle line basically took shape in the wood lines there to the distance over here on my right shoulder here. But it's also during this time now, folks, and it's important that you kind of got to link the Morris Farm with what the Army of Tennessee is doing along with Tolliver's division that's coming in with on their right flank. Over across my left shoulder here, as we look back towards the coal plantation, Robinson's brigade was kicked back across that field to a position over here on the old Goldsboro Road, but the Army of Tennessee is clearly now sitting on the right flank of the 82nd Illinois over here. And it makes these 2 regimental commanders very nervous. And it's there's some great initiative on their part. What they're essentially going to do is, where their line is orientated to the north, they're essentially going to execute a movement that brings them like this. So essentially now these 2 regiments with the rest of Hawley's brigade across the ravine will be almost at a 90-degree angle. But what that allows the 13th New Jersey and the 82nd, it protects their flank. But as the Army in Tennessee and later on William Tolliver's division surges across this field towards the Morris Farm, it allows these two regiments here to essentially fire right into their right flank. Now, what's important to understand about the Morris Farm, I've talked about Robinson's brigade, first one getting here. Here comes Hawley. Then comes another brigade, Selfridge, that deploys even further to the west. At this same time, additional artillery batteries from the 20th Corps are starting to arrive. One of the first is Stevens Brigade Battery with 4 12-pound Napoleons, which are positioned over here on this side of the ravine, closer to the old Goldsboro Road. Essentially, right after the 140 is where the Robinson's Brigade is located at as well. When the Army of Tennessee and Elliott and Rhett's Brigade are making this move here, their very first charge they make on this particular part of the battlefield is essentially only 4 guns from Stevens Battery. But what will happen is the Army of Tennessee will fall back to essentially where Battleground Road is today, and William Tolliver's division will begin to execute a series of additional more charges. Now, the first brigade that makes that charge is General Elliott's brigade. And what's interesting about General Elliott's brigade, a good part of them broke very early at the Battle of Averysboro, which occurred only about 72 hours previous to this fight right here. Elliott's brigade will make one charge across this field and essentially are kicked back. Alfred Rhett's brigade, now commanded by William Butler, Colonel Rhett was captured at Averysboro. William Butler's brigade now will make anywhere between 4 to 5, depending on whose counts you want to follow, but they will make 4 separate charges across this open field here at the Morris Farm. And the way to think about it is they're pretty fired up with that first one. The rebel yell is pretty loud, but they're only up against, what, 4 guns. By the time they make their second charge, now you're looking at anywhere between 8 to 12 guns. So each one of these subsequent charges that Rhett's brigade will do across this portion of the battlefield, as I said before, every 30 minutes another infantry brigade is arriving, but more importantly, what the Chief of Artillery is doing for the 20th Corps here, he is concentrating all his guns in this one particular point. So after every one of these charges, another battery essentially arises. So by the time Rhett makes his last charge late in the afternoon of March 19th, along with General Bates's crew from the Army of Tennessee, those soldiers are now coming up against approximately 20 individual artillery pieces. And the whole time, the 13th New Jersey and the 82nd Illinois is able to fire right into the right flank. I'm actually standing in the trenches dug on the afternoon of March 19th by the 13th New Jersey. As you can see, as you look over on my left shoulder here, the open field upon which Rhett and Elliott's brigade from Tolliver's division, as well as the Army of Tennessee, defended from this point here. Now ultimately, and the final charge that afternoon, the last charge by Rhett's brigade, as well as Bates, that is essentially it here at the Morris Farm, because more forces have arrived, in particular Cogswell's brigade from the next division coming up, Ward's division coming up from the 20th Corps. They are sent on the south side of the Goldsboro Road and essentially sent to link up with Morgan's division, and they're the ones who really become the hunters against the rear of the Army of Tennessee, which is ultimately south of the Goldsboro Road. Once Cogswell's brigade is successfully linked in there, between Cogswell, Fearing, and Robinson's brigade, now with the rest of these right here, the Morris Farm line is now pretty much established and linked with General Morgan's division from the 14th Corps. Throughout the day has fought this desperate fight over there, and they've come out on top. Now no longer with the mass of infantry and the guns here from the 20th Corps, Morgan's division is no longer isolated. They're now essentially connected with the two here, and by late in the evening, General Joe Johnston realizes that they pretty much culminated, and late in the evening, the Army of Tennessee, as well as Tolliver's 2 brigades from here, will fall back a good mile and a half back towards those original entrenchments I showed you in one of the earlier videos on the Army of Tennessee. I do want to throw here real quick, folks, this particular part of Bentonville State Historic Site, here I'm discussing the trenches here and where Hawley's brigade was on March 19th initially. This is all a brand new trail network coming here. Nice wayside interpretive panels have been put in. So it's a great new part of the battlefield that's opened up. It allows you to see the 20th Corps, really what they're doing over here on March 19th. So I encourage you all to come on out.